One thing, kind of surprising thing, okay, whether here in physical, there are not so many people. I got very, very surprising news. 28,000 people now in online attending this forum. So, okay, so this is time to invite third presenter from Milano. Okay, wait a minute. She is really a reading scholar, okay, service design. So I'm very happy to meet her here. Politecnico Milano, and her name is Daniela Sangiorgi. Right, Daniela, right? So the topic is transformative service design and service design transformation. So I didn't chance to look at detail because this presentation, I got in the morning her presentation. But more than 100%, it'll be kind of wonderful time. I think you guys have wonderful time. So let's invite third presenter, Daniela. Okay.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Well, I'd rather not know that we had so many people online. But anyway, so thanks so much for having me. As Jaden was saying, I'm Daniela Sangiorgi. I'm here from Politecnico di Milano. And my presentation is looking into the relationship between the transformative role of service and the transformative role of design, and somehow how these things interconnect. I've been briefed to bring some of the key concepts around service design in academia, but I also try to connect a bit with practice, so I hope that it is valuable for the diverse audience that we have today. Just a few words about myself. My background is actually industrial design from Politecnico di Milano, so I'm very Politecnico-centered. And I did a PhD in service design when it was not really there yet, so exploring this new field around 2000, and did a period in Southern Denmark University. So, and then I spent 8 years in the UK where I supported the foundation of this new research center, ImaginationLancaster, and there I started to look into more public healthcare and service design around public services. And then 2015 I got back to Milano, and I also there continue working around service innovation, specifically around mental health care. That was an area where I spent most time in these last years. So my research journey is really about being the development of the role of design and the meaning of design, and the transformation of the role and meaning of service, and how they somehow interconnected. And actually, in 2007, I've been here in Hong Kong, so quite a time ago. So many things, I'm sure that many things changed. So thanks again for having me. And today I will be going through three main, let's say, areas. Exploring the transformative role of services and connect it with organizations, with more community and society, and then systems, and then think how this relate with the practice of service design. And then very few final thoughts around the implications of on service design as a practice and as a field. So I start with the transformative role of services and service for organizations. And in this field, of course, the kind of notions and work, an area where we have been working on is the notion of servitization. So you might be familiar with this. So when we talk about bringing services into organizations, and particularly manufacturing, the key notion is about the servitization, which is somehow the idea that service innovation brings a different kind of practice, different kind of innovation into manufacturing. And so if we talk about servitization of manufacturing, we really talk about this transition from a product-centric business model and logic towards that is focused on selling units of products to a more service-oriented business model and logic. That is more about facilitating customer value creation. So when we think about this transition, it's really about a change in the logic of the organization. So that's why it's not only about transformative services, but it's also about the transformative service, so more kind of a logic, a way of thinking, a culture. And the idea that a service culture is different from a product culture because it's more focused on people, on the human side, and less of focusing on the technology, on the product itself, and more on the value creation. And the change in organization is, of course, is very structural, organizational in terms of processes and technology and logistics and so on. But there is one of the biggest challenge is really the change in the behaviors, in the values, and the mental models. And this transition has also been recently associated with another big driver of transformation, which is digital transformation. And so you might hear more about digital servitization. So the idea that the use of digital technology can lead and facilitate this transformational process, again, from a product-centric to a service-centric business model and logic. Even if servitization has been often supported and facilitated by digital technologies because it is really enabling platform to connect better, to monitor better, connect in a remote way with products, enabling solutions for customers, clients, or final users. So if we bring design into the picture, there has been an interest in to understand how to facilitate this transition, no? From really focusing on products, technical components, to offering more solutions. And one of these areas being, for example, the idea that design can facilitate the organizations to develop value propositions that are centered and around services. So a value proposition, as you know, is a way for organizations to represent how to support the actor, the clients in their value creation processes. And so it's about moving this way of defining the value of the business from delivering value through products to actually offering a capability. So the example of the Danish company Danfoss from developing refrigeration system or technical components to actually, for example, setting temperatures. So it's about accompanying these processes. And to give you an idea of the role of design within these processes, as an example, I found this project by Mondragon University from Spain as maybe one of the more extensive one in terms of contribution, because they worked for a few years with 10 manufacturing companies that were already developing Industry 4.0 technologies. And they went through different workshops and sessions with them to actually accompany this process of transformation. So from identifying customer value and collect customer data, to then integrate, visualize, prioritize customer insights through visualizations, to then use these insights into conceptual design for these new advanced services models, and then develop and prototyping the service operation touchpoints. So the idea that this journey somehow help an organization and their own stakeholders, so internally and externally, to gradually shift the mindset. And one of the inputs of reflections around this practice was the importance of using visualization tools that has the fundamental role to support the change in the mental models and help establish a shared understanding, allow to understand and share insights about customer and stakeholders across different partners, so not only within, but also externally, and then really guide the companies through this journey of transformation. So this is an example of one of the possible contribution of design within this field that is really working more at the organizational and then, of course, on the supply system around this transition. If instead we move to look into the transformative role of services more in a from a societal perspective and community perspective, then the field of design that has been mostly working on this for a while has been design for social innovation. So in this case, we need to enter into a new field, another field that you might be familiar with, which is belonging to the service research fields of study. And recently, the field of service research has been starting to look at the transformative role of services for society. So the idea to understand and study more how services can contribute to the well-being of individual communities and the ecosystem. So instead of having service research, which brings together service marketing, service operations, and so on, instead of focusing just on the business, economic side and experience side, we really try to dedicate some energy and time to think about how to better understand and transform services to our well-being. And this can be done at different levels. One is really about understanding at the interaction level between a customer and employee, between a user and service staff, really looking not just at the experience of users, but also the well-being of staff, and how and which conditions enables this. Another area is more considering also the impact that services have on people, in particular vulnerable populations, so understanding when and how to reduce inequality and disparity, so when services have restrictions, bias that reduce the possibility for an inclusive society. And then lastly, there is an interest in moving from understanding just individual well-being, so how can we improve the well-being of people, users, and customer and employees, but also the collective well-being, because services are ubiquitous. So wherever you turn around, you find a service system that is supporting the way we live, we move, we study, we raise families, and so on. So services do create the world and structures within which we live. So by realizing this impact that services have in our life and the social structure that shape them, then we can actually try to imagine how we can have a radical impact. Service research and transformative service research has recognized the service design as a vehicle to improve, to work around the transformative role of services. And so the claim is, how can we move from services being transformative by nature to be transformative by design? So there is an interest in service research that has been mostly analytical, to really learn from service design as being more action-oriented and oriented toward change. And as I was saying, the field in design that has been mostly working on transformative services from a community perspective has been design for social innovation. I know here you have social design, is quite related. So originally, most of the practices has been about how can we sustain promising cases of sustainable practices. This idea that citizens, people can have the possibility to create new enterprises, social enterprises, or initiatives to support people, and then design can come in to try to reinforce, upscale, and sustain the development through the application of design skills. And recently we see projects that work more on incubating social innovation processes, so helping groups of citizen people to move from understanding, tackling ill-defined problems to framing, developing intuition through design entrepreneurship skills. And I took this example from colleagues in Milan that have been working for a long time in design for social innovation. This is a project, the School of Neighbors, has been done together with the municipality of Milan. And the idea that there are different areas of Milan, there are disadvantaged areas. How can you support citizens to become entrepreneurial, develop practices that can support transformative, transforming key challenges in the cities through 3 main cycles of scouting, incubation, so engaging, inspiring, scouting, training, learning, connecting, then coaching, prototyping, and sustaining. And here the role of service design has been identified as both supporting a cultural empowerment, meaning through training, through co-designing, supporting the citizen to develop the capabilities of understanding better problems, and then technical empowerment, meaning giving them the skills in terms of design and entrepreneurship to accelerate the conception and prototyping of solutions. And this is, again, very few words around this area, just to introduce this topic. And then if we move even larger, so when we think about the challenges that we are facing today, there is a pressure to scale up in terms of how we can actually approach these challenges. That's why there is a very increasing interest in service system, complex service system, ecosystem, like it was introduced this morning. And the field that somehow is starting to approach this in service design is called service ecosystem design. So when we move into understanding change, not just at an organization level, community level, but we look into society and we want to talk about transformational change, we need to consider that we're not referring only to the social change, which is kind of a micro, meso level change that happens every day, but it's not kind of paradigmatic change in itself, but it's something that we can testify every day in our practice, in our life. When we talk about transformational change, we mean a social transformation is more a macro level fundamental change that do attach the deep structures, the invisible deep structures that define how we live. So when we talk about social structures, we mean the core values, the norms, the beliefs, the power structures that are given for granted and then define the society we live in. So even the COVID-19, with all the massive change that goes across the globe, or the Arab Springs revolution, so we can see this very large scale impact, but then the change didn't last. So somehow we can say that they didn't really impacted the power structures, the core values that somehow define the society. So we can see very few tracks of COVID in terms of how it changed our life. So when we talk about transformational change, so therefore we need to look hidden, at the hidden level, the not manifested structures that qualify our life. In service research, these are called institutional arrangements. So when we talk about service system transformation, we mean that we are reconfiguring the actor resources and practices, but that is the superficial level, the evident. But in order to change those in a transformational way, we need to change also the corresponding institutional arrangements. So the hidden rules, norms, assumptions, and beliefs, or we call it also social structures from a sociological perspective. So the idea is, how can we design try to address those? So when we talk about transformational change, therefore, it's not just about the scope, which is the widespread, how big is the change that we are aiming for, but it's also about the endurance. So how much the changes we're doing are institutionalized, meaning they become consistent and they are legitimate reconfigurations. No? Sometimes we can do a small change that is lasting, no? Or we can do a larger change, but it is not then actually becoming sustainable. So it's about scope, endurance, and then it's paradigmatic radicalness. So it means how disruptive is the change, the reconfiguration that the project is enabling. So really challenging the paradigmatic beliefs of the service system. So when we talk about transformational change, in theory, we should try to address these three dimensions. And so in order to reflect on this consideration, there has been this new field emerging from the study, PhD study of Josina Vink, that she tried to overcome this reductionist view of service design that did ignore this institutional arrangement. So we consider more the surface designing, but we didn't realize often that there was something deeper to be considered. And that's why some innovation didn't last. No? So service ecosystem design is the intentional shaping of these institutional arrangements and their physical enactments. And it's about trying to integrate or realize when and how service design can have this role. So for example, service design practices, if used in a conscious way, can try to, for example, challenge existing mental models, no? By making things, sharing experiences, bring together different perspectives, simulating, experimenting new practices, and so on. So moving between the macro and the micro level of design. Examples, for example, this is a project, the Patient Journey project is a project by Experiolab, which is this design lab across Sweden working in the healthcare field. And this is a project they often talk about, the fact that they asked 29 employees at the municipal and county level to follow and act within the real patient cases and journeys through hospitals. And this kind of shifted often the mindset of the staff, because they actually developed more a patient perspective of the care model that we're working in every day. Another is the idea of co-designing, co-producing services, because that's where you kind of bring multiple perspectives together, and that also giving value to different forms of knowing. So not only the technical knowledge, the professional knowledge, but also the lived experience knowledge, for example, of users and family members. And then there is also an interest lately to develop dedicated tools, service design tools, to enhance individual and collective reflexivity, to really reveal these hidden social structures that inform the designing. And together we're looking into reflexivity and try to form and make this hidden social structure more visible. There is also, of course, the need to work at the macro scale. This is a project I've been working in a few years ago now. And the aim of this project was to develop regional and local care ecosystems around mental health care, to try to transform this, the care ecosystems in the Lombardy region in Italy. And so what qualified this project was really about bringing a multidisciplinary perspective, but in particular a multi-level approach. So we were doing actions at the individual treatment level, at the co-production of services, at the systemic, more organizational change, and then at the level of trying to change the way people perceive mental health and mental health perception. So a multi-level approach with different actions, from developing tools to change the interaction between doctors and patients, to designing co-produced services like the Recovery College. We as designers work more on developing, co-designing territorial labs, which were outside institutional services, that were really about opening up and creating a community-based mental health care. And then there were actions also at the macro level, like theater festivals or other initiatives that were trying to bring and overcome the kind of stigma and taboo around mental health care in society and so on. So that's, these are the kind of 3 rounds of presentation that I wanted to touch upon some examples. Of course, it's very quick around some of the topics. And now I just want to close with some reflections in terms of what are the implications on looking into transformative role of design and services for service design itself. And we talked about today the need to change service design practices, what is the service design futures. So in the service design communities, there are different things going on. One, of course, is that we need to look more into systemic design. So there is a lot of interest into integrating knowledge coming from systemic design field that has been for a while looking into complex service systems. So we're trying to learn how to look at service systems not as technical service system, but as social technical system, which means that they are not complicated, but they are complex, meaning unpredictable, and therefore is about abandoning a very linear understanding of service designing, customer journeys, kind of predictive models, to more understanding, embracing the emergence that systemic approach to service design requires, but also an experimental approach, meaning that when you're looking for systemic change, you need to have a longer term vision, a vision of what you're aiming for. And that means taking a more evolutionary experimental approach to service design means understanding that the actions we do are more experiments that we evaluate and then see if actually they are failing or they're a positive output, and then therefore trying to replicate or amplify the actions. But this longer term vision was not necessarily part of the original way of service designing. The other aspect is that if we really want to change systems, the focus is not just anymore about individual users, but it's more about relationships, because it is relationships that actually forge systems, and therefore trying to move our co-design practices to be tool-oriented. We know fixated with co-design tools, but actually relationships-oriented, because that's where the most potential for transformation is. And also designers learn how to develop long-term, authentic and mutual connections in our work as designers. And then the last thing is, if we really consider and accept this emergent relationship-based approach to service design, then we need to understand that service design is very situated and emergent itself, which is kind of acknowledging the local knowledge and the potential for change. And therefore, it's about abandoning this idea of this kind of replicable, abstract approaches to service design and try to open up to a very diverse way of innovating. And that's where service design is trying to reach out in terms of community conferences and learning from different way of approaching innovation. And I think this is the right place to do this. So thanks again for having me, and I'm happy to join the conversation. Thanks so much.